this line of questioning really highlights the fact that it's not easy, right? It is an area where we're trying to deal with multiple members of Congress who each have their own unique histories of why and how they came here. I will say that over the last few months, one of the top reasons why my constituents have been reaching out to me is that they want to urge a ban on individual stock ownership for members. So it is not something that is in a vacuum. We are dealing with our constituents are asking us to make sure that we have that separation, that we have that independence, and that our best interests in what we do financially is not at all tainted by what we do here. And, and I agree with that. I don't think members should be in the business of owning or trading individual stocks. When I first got elected, soon after it was brought to my attention that my retirement portfolio my 401k had a very modest amount in an individual stock. So I had to go in and actually take the extra effort to actually say, no, you can't get rid of that. I do not want to have there be any question at all. But as the chairwoman noted, I was not aware of that until it was brought to my attention, and I immediately asked them to turn it into something else. I don't know what you're going to do with it, just turn it into something else. But the other thing that strikes me is that we're talking about choice. I love the fact that that word came up a lot, because when we run, when we ask voters to elect us, which we have to do every 2 years, we are making a choice at that time. So if we know that we have a large portfolio of stocks, and if it is known in advance that once you get elected, you are going to have to divest yourself of those stocks or put it in a blind trust if you have enough to make sure that you can pay the costs and deal with the complexity, that's a choice you are making when you are asking voters to trust you. And so we need to return that trust. And as long as we know that's what we need to do, then that comes part of the decision-making process. But there is an issue of timing. And so, like, how long would you recommend that a member of Congress, once elected, be allowed before they have to engage in that divestment, before, if they inherit something, what is reasonable then? I mean, because we want to be able to provide a period of reasonableness that everybody knows about. And I'll ask that of the panel. So I see several of you shaking your heads up and down. So what would you answer to that?
I'll be faster than I usually am. I think the important thing, again, to consider is and look and see how things have been handled in the executive branch. And so I think the timelines that are given there, I think might be a good indicator. I think also, some people have suggested that maybe any additional restrictions shouldn't go into place until a member wins re-election. And I think that may also be reasonable. I think we're certainly not trying to create an ethics program that's impossible to comply with. We're trying to do the opposite, and it should be as simple to comply with as possible.
Right, and waiting until after re-election allows that member to make the choice as to whether they will continue to ask for that. Right. Mr. Sherman.
I agree. I think the executive branch provides some examples. I also think that the time period should be with all deliberate speed, particularly relative to the 2-year term of service that members are elected to. So I've seen some proposals which are 90 days, 120 days. That seems not unreasonable, but I think with all deliberate speed is advisable.
And Professor Nagy, as you answer that, I have another one, and since I don't have a lot of time, I'll just see if you want to answer that. And also, we keep pointing to the executive branch and its models. Are there instances of something that's in the executive branch that doesn't quite fit within a congressional setting, and what are some of those examples?
So on the timing issue, I would say that I think a number of the bills actually, particularly for inheritance, raise 180 days as the time that someone would have to divest. And I think the consideration there is that sometimes the stock market is not doing what one wants it to do, and that gives a little bit of time there. I would also say for any divestment that is required under legislation that Congress enacts, I would also recommend the same type of rollover of capital gains tax that is currently in force, that Congress has currently put in the statute for the executive branch. I think that if someone sells assets, sells stock and other securities because they are ordered to do so, and they move that into a diversified mutual fund, they should the law should be written so that capital gains is deferred. Going to the executive branch, that is the rule in the executive branch. I think what the executive branch has, because it is, in most instances in the agency, it's not an outright prohibition, although there are exceptions. The FCC is one exception. Don't own telecommunications stock. The disclosure forms that executive branch officials complete allows the ethics agency to determine whether there is a conflict of interest or is not. And then that then triggers the need for recusal or divestiture. And clearly that's not the instance here. Mr. Sherman before referenced the sort of brewery example that is codified in the manuals there. The House and Senate Ethics Manual reference stock ownership and explicitly say that divestment is not required even if members own stock in companies that directly and substantially affect the legislation. So the problem is greater than the current law allows this. It's that the problem is that the current rules in the House and Senate safe harbor this.